Greetings, YouTube. I am a Star Wars fan. Star Wars The New Hope is the only film I've seen in the theaters 6 times. And I'm a fan of the first 3 chapters, 4 through 6. Not a fan of the first 3. 1 through 3, no. The prequels were not my thing. And I don't hold up much hope for the ones they're going to be making in the near future. Could be great. Maybe they learned their lesson. Lucas isn't really involved, so that's positive. But, not hold my breath. But, I am a fan of the new Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels. I picked this up at a thrift shop for $3, which was a really nice deal, even though it's in a slightly rough condition. I'd considered purchasing this online, and I'd actually hunted down a copy on Amazon, just hadn't gotten around to ordering a copy when I stumbled upon this, oddly enough, in the magazine section of the of a thrift shop. It has the original MSRP of $25. Now, this is a fairly standard style technical manual that you'll find from a lot of properties. And what you get in this book, you get a full page image, and you get a little schematic down here which gives you some pertinent data, and then it gives you a write-up of the vehicle itself. And it gives you a little blurb in the center. I like little quotes. I've always enjoyed those. So, like, for example, don't they know that painting the ship red only makes it better target? Spoken by the Trade Federation gunner, Jewel Drummond, shortly before firing upon the Radiant 7. I have to like those little kind of quotes. They make me smile. And it gives you a size comparison in with the picture, so you have a rough idea for, like, you know, it gives you like maximum its size, maximum speed, both in G's and in hyperdrive. It gives you a primary manufacturer, and it gives you the rough affiliation of who would be using this ship. Of course, ships get lost and change ownership, so who knows who might own a ship. And then the schematic gives you the rough breakdown of the different components of the ship. And what's nice is that there's a brief description of the ship itself, you know, kind of technical terms, but then they talk about famous ships that are of this type. So, you know, obviously you're making more than one vehicle. I drive a Honda Accord. There are millions of Honda Accords. But this Honda Accord in the driveway, whose name is Dirk, is mine. And so I could tell you about Dirk as a specific vessel, and they do that as well. And in the back, there are things like speed comparison charts with a rough silhouette to give you an idea. You know, look at comparing things. Then there's some very short blurbs about some of the ships that really didn't get to see a whole lot of center stage time. Just less important vehicles that didn't get a full-fledged write-up. Then we have things like the Battle of Endor. It gives you a rough breakdown of the ships that were involved in that particular battle. So you have an idea of the Battle of Hoth, the Battle of Yavin, the Battle of Geonosis, which is kind of cool. Then they have things like, variations of some of the ships that we are familiar with. This is the Headhunter, which is sort of like an X-Wing model, but only 2. I actually kind of like the Headhunter design. But there's things like the Y-Wing. There are some there's like the Yozen Hong World Ship, which is an organic style vessel. The Yuzhan, or Yuzhan? Y-U-U-Z-H-A-N. They use a lot of organic biotech ships, which is very cool. Then there's things like the Y-Wings, and they're like A-Wings and K-Wings, and things like this. And some of these ships I had never heard of because I'm just not up on the canon of Star Wars. Then there's the Snowspeeder, which is one of my favorite designs of all. I always liked the Snowspeeder. It just looked cool and looked very fast. It looked like something I could see parked in my driveway. That would be so much nicer to be able to avoid so much of the traffic I have to deal with every day. If I could just hop in a Snowspeeder and go! Or a speeder, that would be so nice. Other things for like the new Starfighter. And while it's cool and everything, I never liked the fact that they stuck that poor astromech out the back with its head poking way up over everything. Then you also have things like land vehicles, like some of the walkers, and this is the Juggernaut, which I think is kind of cool. I've always been a fan of wheeled vehicles. I guess I'm old school in that regard. And this was just so much fun to flip through. I mean, just absolutely a joy to be looking through. The art is great. The write-ups are great. The whole idea that was put together as a technical manual that you could be reading in the Star Wars universe itself. There are 2 others in the new Essentials section, I believe, and I'll be picking up those up eventually. And I've got an older version of the Vehicle and Vessel Guide somewhere in my collection, which I now have to hunt down and I can get rid of, because this is definitely going to replace it, even though it's not as in nice a condition. The content is just so much better, and the art is good, and I was really happy to have found this at a thrift shop. That was a nice find on my part. I'm a lover of tech manuals. I own tech manuals for role-playing games that I don't own the core rules. I just own the tech manual because I think that the tech stuff is just so much fun to look at. The speculative fiction aspect of it. I love speculative fiction. And I call it speculative fiction because a lot of times it is that. It's speculative. It isn't necessarily pushing the bounds of science all that far. It's just speculating things that we don't have yet, but I know roughly in the realm of the possible. Now, obviously, the Star Wars is science fantasy. It's not speculative fiction. But a lot of tech manuals you bump into are speculative fiction. Like for the Q manual for the original James Bond game could fall into the category of speculative technology. It's some of it's on the cusp right there, but it's not completely impossible. And I like that aspect of it. I'm also a big fan of biotechnology. I didn't know that they had really had any biotechnology in the Star Wars universe. Again, I'm not up on the canon all that much, so I missed out on that part. I also, one of the reasons I really liked the D20 version of Star Wars, which I think would make an excellent generic science fiction game. It's just so many races in there that I had never heard of, and all of them have stats. It's so awesome. It's just like flipping through one of the best manuals ever. But I highly recommend this for anyone that's a Star Wars fan, or if you're into gear as far as for inspiration for a role-playing game, because you could use this as inspiration for other science fiction games other than Star Wars. You could say, okay, this is the kind of ship I want, for its layout and size and crew capacity and things like this. And it's a shorthand. You can say, this is what my ship looks like. And people say, oh, you're stealing ideas from Star Wars. Well, it's if it's our future, if it's a science fiction setting set in our future, why not? If technology exists, who isn't going to recreate some of the vessels in this book? They can. So you can say, okay, you found a guy who recreated the Millennium Falcon. Even if the drives and weapons don't exist, you could still recreate the ship itself. Wouldn't that be cool? So I think it has use outside just Star Wars fans. But of course, that's what it's aimed at. And I am a Star Wars fan, though not as rabidly, fanatic about it as some folks. You don't see me getting dressed up as Star Wars characters, though I have a lot of props people who do that because they go to a lot of effort to come up with that for armor and things like that. If you're a member of the 502, just the fact that I know who the 502 is a sign that I'm a Star Wars fan. So go get yourself a copy of this if you can. It's a really good book, a lot of fun. I enjoyed reading it, and I'm glad I have it as a reference.